Commission meeting for Monday, September 28th. Roll call, please.
Chair Bussey.
Here.
Alder Holmquist.
Here.
Mr. Dorschel.
Here.
Ms. Devenish. Here. Mr. Stein.
Here.
Rest are excused.
Item 3, approval of minutes from September 14th.
Move approval.
Second.
Are there any additions, deletions, anything that was submitted electronically maybe?
Mr. Homburg had a couple comments. One was on page 4. He says, Mr. Ganser's comment, I believe, pertained to the height of the existing facade, not the arch. So I can clarify the language there, but without Mr. Ganser here to confirm. Not sure.
Okay. If you could just verify with him offline, and if that's the case, that'd be fine.
Mm-hmm. And on page 6, on the comments regarding the Trista ground sign, he requested eliminating the words "and pedestrians." And he also comments, I think this is a serious issue, and hopefully some other commissioners have had the time to look at it.
Thank you. Any other corrections, edits, deletions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, minutes are approved. Appearances, is there anyone here who wishes to appear tonight on an item that's not on the agenda? Okay, we will close the appearance section, move on to unfinished business. There is none. Move on to new business, 6A, public hearing on request for a zoning permit, precise implementation plan on the proposed new construction of a 7,000 square foot Meineke Car Care Center at 1000 East Broadway, presented by Rob Pock, Keller Architects, 2/13/2015. Okay. Yep. You want to come up and get us started? Okay.
My name's Greg Collins. I'm an attorney with Axley Brynolson, and I'm here on behalf of my partner, Robert Proctor, who is out of town today and couldn't make this meeting. Wanted to give you a little bit of background in terms of the applicants as well as the proposed project. The two gentlemen here tonight, Carl Kampmeyer and Joe Salins, operate 5 Meineke dealerships. Those are located 2 in Madison, 1 in Sun Prairie, 1 in Cottage Grove, and 1 in Appleton. Between them, they have approximately 50 years of combined experience in the car care business. All 5 locations that they operate are as Meineke franchises. Meineke is a nationally recognized franchise that has been in existence for more than 40 years. The Meineke Car Care Center at this location would be very similar to the location that they have in Sun Prairie. Meineke has moved aggressively towards creating an operation that is very top of the line and competes with car dealerships. And so the facility itself is very nice looking. The particular building in Sun Prairie, to give you an idea, located immediately adjacent to one side of it, is a retail/commercial center, which is brick and has some stone facade. There is a Cops Food Center. There is a bank, McFarland State Bank. And once they completed their facility, actually immediately across the street have been constructed high-end apartments, which again are clad in brick. So overall, a very nice development, and it, from a visual standpoint, blends in quite nicely with the surrounding buildings. In terms of the facility itself, they'll provide general car care services, oil changes, maintenance, repair of brakes, steering, tires, mufflers, air conditioners. There will not be any auto body work done on the site, and all of the services are provided within the building itself. All of the storage of products, oil tanks, dumpsters will either be inside the building or hidden from public view. The traffic noise from the facility itself will be minimized to the extent that all the services can be done with the doors closed. It will be. There may be some times during the summer where it's extremely hot that they will have to have the doors open, but if there is any particular repair work that will be done that will have a higher noise level, the doors would be shut at that time. The vehicle parking will be done for the employees as well as temporarily for vehicles as they are brought in and out for service. I believe the intended hours of operation would be 7:30 a.m. each morning, and that would operate until 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and Saturdays until 3 p.m. The benefits of the property is it's going to, from an appearance standpoint, blend in very well with the UW facility as well as the retail center, which is located in front of the proposed building. That retail center presently is on Broadway Avenue, and so therefore from the street there really wouldn't be any view of the car care facility. I think this is an excellent use for that site. It would add significant tax base to the city of Monona for that property being developed, and we would ask that you would consider approval of the plan. And to the extent there are any questions in terms of the operations of the facility, I would defer to the two owners who are here this evening.
Thank you. Were you going to present anything or say anything too? Or?
No, I think he laid it all out on here. I can answer questions specifically about
Okay.
the civil engineering or the architecture of the building.
Okay. Owners?
Well, if you have the questions prior, Carl.
Okay.
Can answer
Well,
anything.
if that's the case, then I'll close the public hearing, and we'll move on to the pre-hearing conference on the request. Sonia?
So this is new construction requiring review of zoning permit and site plan by the Plan Commission, and the CDA, Community Development Authority, and the City Council must also authorize any substantial improvements on this property because it's located in a redevelopment district. This is a pre-hearing conference, so no action will be taken, but I've listed items for the Plan Commission to discuss, with number 1 being the proposed use, and some site plan comments being adequacy of the parking stalls proposed, and a consideration by the Plan Commission if some of the parking stalls could be removed in order to increase green space and landscaping area. Right now, the surplus is 8 over what the minimum parking stall requirement would be. Landscaping is recommended to be increased. It's short of the minimum requirement for landscaping points. Also recommended landscaping to be added so that it screens the parking lot areas from visibility on the belt line, and also adding a tree island per the landscaping requirements of the code. 4-sided building architecture is recommended. The rendering shows brick on 3 sides of the building, and the architectural drawings submitted show a metal sheeting on the 4th side of the building. Revised plans and a letter should be submitted that address the comments from our consultant engineer, and he's not here tonight, but his letter summarized everything. There were some minor comments and a few larger ones that he pointed out, one being private water main to the hydrant should be changed to 8 inches instead of 6 inches. The determination of whether the water main size is adequate to provide flow and pressure needed for a sprinkler suppression system is the responsibility of the applicants in order to meet any state requirements for sprinkler. And then some detail on hydrant, valve, and storm sewer, and then a comment on parking and vehicle circulation regarded to fire trucks on the site, and the comment that a parking stall on the south end of the site be removed so that a fire engine can access the south side of the building. And then some other comments from the consultant engineer on stormwater management plan revisions. Stormwater maintenance agreement is required. Stormwater management and erosion control permits are required. And that's all of the issues that I had.
And then, were there any comments that were shared with those that couldn't join us today?
Some comments from Chris Homburg, who's not here. He says, with the level of architecture and materials proposed, I would support this use in this area. I do, however, agree very strongly with staff's comment that the finishes need to wrap all four sides. The west side will be visible at times from the beltline. I like the substantial use of brick, architectural detailing, and entry tower. Well done. Do we need all of the asphalt? Question. Also, don't stripe any of the south stalls and see how the use works for the applicant. I understand the fire chief's concerns on accessing the south end of the building. Make sure the applicant is aware of our desire to not have overnight storage or car lots, and make sure applicant is aware of existing soil conditions at the site. And he also agrees with the comments to increase landscaping.
Thank you. Bob, do you want to kick us off and go around the table?
Sure. Overall, I think it's a good use of the site. I think it fits in well, and I think the building is attractive. I would agree. The things that stand out are the minimal landscaping, especially pulling into the site, which is going to be most visible for users. I think you have about two 20-foot by 5 beds with about 5 shrubs in either one. I think that could be greatly increased. If you wanted to continue the same landscaping that you had around the light poles on the south end of the lot, I think that would be a place for addition as well. I like the detail of the patio. I think that's a nice added use for employees, and I don't know if that's open for public as well, but that's a nice touch. I like that. The operation hours, just to be clear, I don't think it's that big of a difference, but would it be till noon on Saturday or 3?
At this point, 4 o'clock is like our standard hours.
4 o'clock?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah,
It says
some-
3 or it says noon in the letter.
Maybe a typo or something,
Okay.
but 4 o'clock, it's-
And then the dumpsters, question about that. They said that they would be either contained in.
We plan on keeping those.
I'm sorry, if you could, we're being recorded. If you could come up for questions so that we can do it, that'd be great. Thank you. Just name and, so it's on record. Appreciate it.
Sure. Joseph Salins. But yeah, the dumpsters we plan on keeping inside, and again, we really refer to our Sun Prairie location. We really want to duplicate that, and we haven't had any problems with, we talk about the fire department or the fire marshal, whoever the entities are that control that. We store everything inside, our trash, our scrap metal, our used tires, everything. And again, we know those things can get pretty sightly, as well as we do have some locations that have the outside dumpsters, and they're the enclosures, and they all look very nice for a very short period of time. But it's been our experience that over time, all of a sudden, garbage is blowing around, people get sloppy putting it in there, so that's our intention. So unless somebody says, hey, you know what, you absolutely can't keep it inside, it's a problem for some reason, that's the only reason we would put it outside. And that's really the reason for the extra bay on the building, is strictly for that, storage. And again, that's what we do at our Sun Prairie location, so we haven't had any problems out there. And that was really a request from Sun Prairie that we do that.
Maybe if you label if that bay is for inside trash, just label it on there so it's,
Yes, storage.
Shown on the floor plan.
oh, and the floor plan. I'm looking at the site plan. Sorry, thanks. Okay. Rob, anything else?
Just that if that were to ever move outdoors for whatever reason, you needed the room for whatever, that screening would match the architecture of the building, would be nice. And if you're going to keep it inside, that's fine by me. I think that's better.
Yeah, well, like I said, that's our intention, and you kind of asked about landscaping and some other things, and I can kind of vaguely answer that question again. Really, we have actually a store up in Appleton and our Sun Prairie store in particular. The patio is really there for the customers. We don't let the employees hang out. We're trying to create an environment or an experience for our customers. We really need to move because the building we're in now, we don't own, and we don't have the ability. We tried to push the landlord into sticking some money in the building. We just can't. Mm-hmm. They won't do it. That's kind of how we got to the point we're at today. Mm-hmm. If we're our choice, we'd stay where we're at, and somebody sticks some money in the building and make it, look nice and acceptable, and we would maintain our level of business, or really maintain the level that our customers expect. But unfortunately, we're dealing with somebody that just doesn't want to. So we basically said, we'll go build something that's acceptable, and that's kind of how we wound up where we're at today.
Rob, anything else?
No.
Brian?
Just for clarity's sake, for me, it's the only piece I didn't see when I looked at the old master site plan. I know things have been implemented different than the original master plan, and so this might not be a question for you. It might be Sonny might even be able to answer it. So when I look at the information that is discussing stormwater management and talks about previously draining to different areas, the two stormwater retention basins that are on the old master site plan do not appear as if they were ever constructed, but there was a regional stormwater management. And can you just speak to that and where it exists?
At least the one I know was constructed between the clinic and the MMSD pump station, but it was something that our consultant engineer reviewed, and he determined that the storage that's available in that basin is more than adequate to address the needs for this development in particular.
Okay, so when I walked out there, it didn't look like a basin. It looked like the drainage ditch, but maybe that's on the other side of the pump station. But I would trust his assessment of that. Right, that helps. I would agree that this is appropriate use. With the parking stall comments, I would wonder why we would need as many if cars aren't being stored for longer periods of time.
It really came from our Sun Prairie location and kind of what the needs were there, and then we wound up adding several of the stalls just because the space was there and it was available. So if it's too much parking, it might be too much by 3 or 4 stalls, and I know there was talk about asking to remove one of them so the fire truck could get in. That doesn't matter to us. I mean, that's just kind of like I said, we generally need, I'm trying to think, Carl, how many stalls we got at Sun Prairie? 23 or 24 stalls do we have out in Sun Prairie? 23 or 24 stalls? I could be off in the number, but it was somewhere in there, and it really got to the point it says, hey, we've got some extra room, why not? But again, we don't store vehicles outside. It's not our intention to. Would you see a vehicle outside because a tow truck pulled a vehicle in at 7 o'clock at night and dropped it in the lot? Yeah, it's possible. But it's not like you're going to see, a bunch of vehicles out there. I can probably pick on a handful of repair shops that you all probably have in mind. Again, the days of the old dirty, grungy shops, we know they're out there. Don't get us wrong. That's not who we are. That's not what we represent. And again, we always encourage anybody to really look at our Sun Prairie store, or even go to our Cottage Grove store, which was, Mike's Auto, and he retired. It was just time for him to go. We put a new parking lot in there. We've redone the waiting room. We really want to create that environment for our customers. It's worked very, very well for us. That's where our success comes from the last 11 years now, I guess.
All right.
Prior to that, we were employees.
Other than that, everything else has been covered. Thank you.
Sharon?
Yeah, I have no problem with the use. I think it's a good use for the site. I think the building that you have, and I'm familiar with some of your other properties like the Sun Prairie one, are attractive facilities, so I think that's certainly an asset to us. I'm also a little bit confused, just like you mentioned, Brian, because we haven't seen a overall site plan, so it's a little hard to identify how close you might be to the next facilities that, and so forth that are there. I assume you must have done something just for a general site plan, or even just a rough sketch for yourselves on that site that maybe you could present to us at some point.
I think everybody would
I'm
context.
gonna refer to Bob on that.
I guess if you could just bring it next time, because it's a pre-hearing conference.
There's a
site
site plan,
plan,
but not
a
for the
context
master.
plan.
Right,
Master,
even if you were to
the
go.
concern is that this is a master plan with for the stormwater and everything, so to have, the one we have doesn't,
We
isn't,
don't have any data for the other buildings in the area. I mean, all you can do is put together an area and kind of try to pop it on. And both sides of it.
what the best you could do, but to give us something that we could, is a concern there.
Well, and the other reason I'd like to see that is just because of the back design that you've put on the building with the sheet metal. So I'd like to just get a better idea of where do you lie on this in relation to the belt line and things before we would rule on that, I think. I've heard several of the commissioners say that they feel it should continue on all four sides of the building. So before I vote on that, I'd just like to have a better feel of how it might lie there. And then the only other thing that I have would be, we typically do in the city, when we have a row of parking stalls that's typically greater than 12, we always do like to see a tree island in there. So I'd suggest that if we do end up with this amount of parking, that we at least split that and just take one of the stalls out and make a tree island. That should be easy enough for you to do. And then again, it makes it a more attractive space for you. So I think that's it. Overall, it's very nice.
Yeah, and
Question, your first comment was, what was your first complaint that you wanted to know, not a complaint, but you wanted to know?
I didn't
how far
complain.
Yeah, how far was to the other buildings?
Well, typically, we're used to looking at something, we've got this old plan that Sonia put in our packet that just gives an overall
Yeah,
thing on the site, and most applicants might typically just come in and there's just a little block here and there, and we get a better feel of where is it laying in there in relation to the clinic or different things, so.
one point of property, and they're back here by themselves.
I understand that. It would just be helpful for us to all see that, and some people just go to Google Maps and clip that out, whatever, and something just to give us an idea. That's all we're asking for.
Thank you.
Yeah.
as far as, and again, just to try and answer some questions, the back of the building, the logic between having the tin on there is again, I'm not an expert, I'm just, my personal opinion is, we did that because we go, well, it's up against a tree line and nobody's gonna see it, so it doesn't necessarily make sense to us to spend money on, brick or making it look nice when nobody's ever gonna see it. Again, if we're in the position that, hey, it's gonna be visible or somebody's gonna see it, absolutely, we're gonna finish it off at that point. So that's
and we
not
might-
really, for us, an issue
We
one
might
way or
agree
the
with you,
other.
but we can't see on your plan where the tree line is, so
No,
things like that, so.
We're gonna rely on Bob to help us out with that. But I'm just trying to tell you that we're not opposed one way or the other.
We understand.
We're certainly open to whatever needs to be done reasonably.
Yeah.
Landscaping, same thing. I mean, again, I keep referring to our Sun Prairie building, and again, landscaping was very important to us. We want to make sure that, again, we're offering that experience. We don't want to pull in a lot and it looks like a big black pad with a square building on it. People pull in and go, what are we doing? We want them to pull in, we want nice landscaping, we want a nice patio for them to sit on, want a very comfortable waiting room for them to hang out in. And really, if you're going to spend 2 hours with us getting your car fixed, which is something very unpleasant to start with, at least we want to make it as comfortable as possible for you to wait while you're doing it. And that's really our objective.
Yeah, and I think we're on the same wavelength, but if you can show us something rather than just tell us, if you can show us, then we can.
Right, absolutely, and we're
say,
going to
yep,
make sure
we got
Bob does that for us. And
Anything else, John? Griff?
I agree that I think this is a good use for this particular site, particularly because it doesn't really, it isn't really adjacent to Broadway itself. I think the issue of whether or not there should be brick on all sides depends upon the detail of how visible it is. And I hope that maybe in the future presentation we can have a better sense of that. I would agree that I would like to see a little more landscaping, and I think the applicant should really look at the question of whether this number of parking garages is really needed or whether some of them could be eliminated and then some green space added. That's all I have.
Anything else, Brian?
I'm just looking for it now. It just came to me regarding signage on Broadway.
That is something, and again, Bob could probably do a little more homework into that.
Your Honor, if it's allowed or not, I think that's the question I'm asking. Maybe that's a landowner question. We do show on our site plan a site monument sign at the
Right.
entrance to our development.
Well, if you, correct me if I'm wrong, Sonia, but they'll have to come back with a signage plan anyway.
That's correct.
So at that time, you can address it at that time. Yep. Come on up. Again, if you could just introduce yourself, it'd be great.
Sure.
Bob from Keller Planners, Architects and Builders. I'm not I had asked my assistant to ask Sonia, and I don't know if he had gotten a chance to talk to you about signage. One of the questions my clients had was, is there the ability, or would code allow a sign right on Monona where the entrance is to that development? So I don't know if that's a question. Are you the landowner?
I'm the landowner.
Okay.
I think it's the decision of the city.
Just to clarify, you said on Monona, did you mean on Broadway?
On Broadway, I'm sorry. And then the question is there a, I don't know, I can't remember if there's a, like a party sign there or whatever you'd like to call it, a development sign where or does everybody have their own signs out front?
We need to have one sign on, as you pull in on the left, UW Clinic right next to the drive-in. Then there's nothing there other than bushes on the right-hand side. So I would think that the city should be able to allow you to put a sign up there. I'm all for it because on our building, we have all the names up on the building. So, and I think for business-wise, that would make a lot of sense to want people to know that it's there and the appropriate sign to help them out because they are back off the street.
So I can talk with your assistant about what the sign regulations are and look at the context. I can't see right now based on the site plan what's out there. So we'll work on a sign application together.
Okay. And you can actually get back to me because I'm in charge of it. I just wanted the answer. Would signage be acceptable on Broadway? It was really my general question. And we do plan on getting a sign company involved to get you the details and fill out the sign application and that kind of thing. So plan on doing that at some point.
When you pick the spot, why don't you get hold of me so I can take a look and see if that's something I want that's not blocking traffic coming in or going out of cars. Because sometimes you put things too far out and so
we'll work through that, but signage isn't on the
Right.
agenda tonight. So
We just thought we'd bring it up for discussion, so I knew
Brian?
where to go from
I
there.
only bring it up because I know if something tucked that far back, that likely is going to be a point for discussion.
Any other further discussion? Okay, so pre-hearing conference, and sounds like there'll be a little homework and working with staff going forward, and then we'll see you in a bit to come back for approval. Correct?
When do we need to resubmit the revisions?
plans are due 2 weeks prior to any plan commission meeting. So when revisions are completed, they're submitted 2 weeks prior to the plan commission date that you'd like to appear at.
Okay. All right, thank you. Close the pre-hearing conference. Before we move on to new business 6C, were you here for the appearance section?
Yeah.
Okay, you were a little bit late, but if the commission doesn't mind, we'll reopen the appearance section. Going to reopen the appearance section. Could you fill out one of those little forms for me? And
You didn't ask us for the materials, but should I bring these to the future meeting?
bring it to the future meeting. Yeah. Thank you. Rental homes, single family. Chris, is it, pronounce your last name for me?
Ready.
Pedretti.
Yep.
Pedretti, 506 Greenway Road. Would like to speak for informational purposes. Thank you.
Well, thanks. I appreciate you letting me sneak in here. I've been speaking with Sonia a little bit about this topic, and First off, my family, we own a home, obviously here in Monona, and we've lived here for about 15 years now. What we have seen lately and over the years, well, one, in the 15 years we've lived here, we've seen a change. Obviously in Monona, a lot of new families moving in. We've started our family here as well. The other thing we've seen is a lot of these homes being sold as rental properties, single unit home rental properties, which is concerning as far as I'm not sure exactly what the city has in place as a density or any kind of rule or code on how many rental properties, how many rental homes can be within the city or within a certain neighborhood or district. For example, the home directly across from ours just sold within the last, well, I guess the last couple months here. They just closed on it. Obviously, you know, Monona is a desirable place to live. It's in demand. A lot of people like to move here for the schools and the community and everything else. This was a home almost directly across from ours. I think it listed around 180,000, typical of a lot of the small ranch homes. They sold their house within in 12 hours. They had 5 different competing offers and bids, and ended up selling to somebody who was going to rent it, which is fine. I'm not against rental properties at all, but it's a shame that if we can't have some kind of a rule in place to make sure we're bringing in single families that are going to build a family here, build a life here in Monona. And it's concerning for myself and for some of my other neighbors when obviously we've put a lot of investment into the community as well with our homes. We want to obviously make sure to protect the home values within the community as well. And ownership and single family homes generally, you're going to see a lot more. Not always, but generally better upkeep, more being put into the home, whether it be remodeling or fixing up those homes, increasing the property values, increasing the tax base as well. You know, I myself we've owned 3 homes now in Monona and have done that as far as fixing them up and continuing. And we recently built our home. There's, like I said, there's a ton of interest. I know Sonia mentioned to me that there's something on the agenda tonight as far as the budget goes for a report or a study of possibly of this type of thing moving forward here. I would fully support that. I would like to know that maybe there is something being put in place because, like I mentioned, there's another home that's adjacent to our property as well that just became a rental property as well. So that's 2 just in the last 2 months now that have changed over to rental properties, almost adjacent to our home. So I think that's pretty much what I came here to speak about.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us tonight. Appreciate it.
All right.
Any questions of the? Alrighty. Thanks, Chris.
Great. Thank you.
We'll officially close for the second time the appearance section. Move to new business review draft of updated implementation element of the comprehensive plan.
All right, it's the last one, and it's only 4 pages.
Yay.
And the statute requires a few things out of this element, that it be a list of programs that are identified as priorities, and then how those would be completed in a stated sequence. It has to describe consistency among the plan elements, and then it has to provide a process for updating the plan. So those things are all included in here. So essentially it's a roadmap of how we're going to implement the 8 sections or elements that precede it. A couple things to note for plan updates. We'll look at some sort of more substantial update 10 years from now in 2025, but in the action plan I recommend some review in shorter intervals so that it doesn't have to be a complete overhaul. I guess jumping into the action table, I'll just go through a few things I pulled from the other 8 elements, things that were more actionable or things that were priorities. And everything that's listed here is within the 10-year time frame, knowing that we'll be looking at this again before you get into years 11, 12, and so on. So nothing goes beyond the 10-year time frame. So with issues and opportunities, when the census comes out again in 2020, and as data is released over the next couple of years, we might want to update demographic information, looking at housing, study implications of renter-occupied versus owner-occupied, and I'll explain the project in the budget item for a time frame that would work for 2016 to 2017. Next one down is promote home ownership through programs such as Renew Monona, and 2018 is there because that's when TID number 2 is closed, from which we'll fund the program. Next one down is listed at year 2020 when we might have an issue with Dane County, where there's a rule that when the population of the county exceeds 500,000, there can be some jurisdictional transfer of county roads to the local jurisdiction, and that's Monona Drive and Broadway, County Highways BB and BW. Update the official map. I'm not sure if we have an official map, so updating that as far as transportation and right-of-way features, so that would be something we might want to look at. Also within the short-term, annual update of the capital improvements plan occurs annually in the budgeting process. Sanitary sewer management plan confirmed with Public Works that is ongoing, as well as the next one, which is stormwater management improvements. And that one's in the short term because Public Works has been working on replacing the problematic stormwater outfalls throughout the city. Parks and open space plan gets updated every 5 years, so the next one would be done in 2020. A forest management plan is on Public Works docket for 2017, and that aligns with one of the comments that Chris Homburg had at our last meeting about replacing trees on Monona Drive and so forth, so that's good that that's in there. The Landmarks Commission is reviewing the list of historic properties that are marked as landmarks right now, so that's why that's also listed in the short term. The next page of economic development. Annually, we're working on the redevelopment area plans and tax increment districts, and specifically in 2018, when TID 2 is closed, we'll have more capacity to consider new ones. Intergovernmental cooperation is pretty general. Land use, we're creating our future land use map right now, so it would be probably wise in 5 years to look at that and see how it's working. And similarly, looking at how our zoning map is working with our future land use map, probably in a shorter term. Plan monitoring, I have conduct a general review, and it should say biennial, so every other year instead of biannual. And that might be a good time where we could go through something like this really brief action plan and just see how we're doing on things. Consider a more focused update of the plan after 5 years. So if there's one element such as housing that might take a little bit more work and we don't want to do a complete overhaul of the plan, we might want to look at that. And then sign code review and zoning code review in the short term, with sign code happening hopefully in the next month or two. And consistently reviewing how our efforts are aligned with the sustainability plan.
Question for you. TID 2 closes in 2018, correct?
Yes.
But is that including the extra year that is used to fund affordable housing, which is Renew Monona?
I think it stays open for that additional year.
So is 2018 the additional year?
2018 is
My point is
without it. So
without it.
Yeah.
So then the 2019 is the additional year?
Right.
Then any future funds would, on CDA economic growth is going to be 2020. If you could just check the math.
Right.
So if it closes in 18, you get to keep the funds for Renew Monona in 2019, so that date changes. And then anything for future economic development would be 2020.
Right. I'll confirm that.
Yeah, just confirm that that's what happens. Any other comments? Oh, by the way, thank you. I thought this was good.
Good.
Rob?
You just said review in the land use section. Review future land use map. You recommended reviewing that in 5 years.
Oh, sorry.
Would it be 10 years or what?
I think it should be 5 years, so that should say 2020.
Anything else,
I think it
Ron?
looks good.
Thanks, Sharon.
I'll just say, I think it's
Good.
excellent. You did a really nice job, Sonia.
Good,
Yeah,
thank you.
I like this.
Okay, good, thank you.
I brought this along too for show and tell. This is the plan as compiled of everything that we've worked on. So it is in one document, except for the maps.
Excellent, thank you very much. Move on to 7A. Next meetings will be,
Budget.
we have budget on the 26th, right? Oh, reports of staff and commission members. Staff report regarding status of development projects proposals. Thank you.
Did we do D?
D, review of
6D?
planning development operating budget. Why am I skipping that? No, there must be something
7:30.
I'm trying to avoid.
Okay. So usually this planning department budget is pretty straightforward and still is, I think. But there are, I think, 4 areas that are generally changeable. The planning intern wage has stayed the same. Professional development last year was $2,400, and I increased that to $2,800, only to move $400 from one account to this account in order to pay for APA dues. It was in the administrator's budget before, so just putting that in the right place. Planning supplies and landmark supplies stay the same. And at the mayor's request, we've added $10,000 for the university year initiative, which is explained in the rest of it. And it's a pilot program where the city of Monona would be kind of the test case for this larger program they're calling University Year. And it's through a couple of different groups on campus, including the Global Health Institute and Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies, COWS, UW Extension, a few other big organizations. And I think the easiest way to describe it is a capstone on steroids, where usually you have a semester-long capstone project where one class might work with a community on a project, and this is taking 3 to 5 priority projects of the city and coupling it over the course of an entire year with courses from an interdisciplinary approach. So for the potential plan commission project that we've listed, the topic is further study on what exactly it means to have a certain percentage of owner-occupied versus rental-occupied housing, what's appropriate for Monona, what rules and regulations we might be allowed to put in place to address it, and how it impacts our land use efforts. And courses that could be added to that could be a legal course, land use and planning course, a housing course, demographics, anything else. And so they would take a couple of different courses and pair it with us.
So this is the 10,000 that's in here is just planning's portion of this.
Correct.
So other departments are also shelling out 10 grand?
The mayor has
What's the total? You don't know the total.
about 4 or
cost.
5 different course projects. And they're looking at a minimum of 3. So this was one of the ones identified as a priority. Sustainability Committee is working on one, which at this point I believe is a multimodal transportation type of project. I don't know if Brian knows anything more about that.
I know nothing. I missed that last meeting, and now I'm curious.
Okay. There are some other things, projects being discussed.
So the small question I have is the part that talks about the city's cost, that this is really about travel, course materials, and I'm unclear of how $10,000 would be captured by the items that are listed there. And maybe that's an issue for us at council level when we see them kind of start to dovetail together of all the different projects. So, I mean, I'm okay at this level from a conceptual standpoint rather than a dollars and cents standpoint.
We can get more information on exactly how that would be.
From what I read, they do evaluate how much the, I don't know if I want to call it donation or whatever, is in addition to other criteria as well. So, well, it comes into play for them. They,
Yeah.
can't afford to give it away either, so. But I'd really like to be involved with this. I think this is really neat.
I would agree. I think it sounds good. What sort of expectation of deliverables do we have working with this sort of thing? Being that if it was like a consultant we were hiring to do this research, you know, we would have a scope of work with deliverables. I'd be interested to know how we know what we're getting for this contribution.
Is this brand new, or has this been done in other communities? And can we see the results of some of the other communities?
This would be brand new for Wisconsin, and there have been comparable, apparently very successful projects. I listed a couple at the bottom. In Minnesota, they called it the Resilient Communities Project. In Oregon, they called it Sustainable Cities Initiative. So there are a few things you can Google there. And then I sent a zipped folder to you guys on Friday. And if you open that up, it has PDFs and examples and an article from the New York Times that raves about the project. And another example I found that I felt was more local and understandable was from University of Stevens Point. So that's not directly affiliated with this project, but it gives you a good idea of how, on a smaller scale, interdisciplinary courses are working on a project they have there on Division Street.
Thank you. Any other comments regarding the budget?
Just in relation to the comments that the gentleman made tonight about the purchase of homes in Monona for rental purposes, my understanding is that this has become a fairly common investment practice now, that a lot of investment consortiums are going out and buying single-family homes coming onto the market as investment opportunities for which they will continue to rent out the homes. And I don't know that anyone has really thought out the implications of that or what kind of regulations we might want to have in effect to ensure that the properties are properly maintained, if we can have some, or what we can do with that. Hopefully that could be included in this kind of a study. But we might even want to ask some of our surrounding communities if they're aware of that and if they're doing anything in reaction to it. Because I think it is a problem we're going to be confronted with on a continual basis.
So Sonia, on the 6D, do we need a vote on this or just comments?
I think a motion would be good on if you accept the spreadsheet, and I highlighted the 4 red numbers that I'd be asking you to approve that I can show the mayor.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the elements and implementation section that has been presented.
There's a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Sonia? Reports of staff and commission members. Staff reporting regarding status of development project proposals. Sonia?
October 12th is our next meeting. There are a few items, including signage at the WPS campus, possibly the Gordon Flesh site improvements, possibly signage code discussion if the agenda is short, and comprehensive plan maps. So right now the agenda is not super defined, but we want to keep October 12th on the calendar because it's likely that we're going to cancel October 26th because that's the only time that committee of the whole with the council can get together to do budgets. So there's a conflict for the 2 alders. So that's the plan at this point.
Thank you. Request by Plan Commission members for information concerning development projects. No comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to 8. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Sonia.